I think our food supply was better years ago than it is now because it's so commercialized these days. And as we were talking before we were on tape, you know, I was saying it's very hard to buy a lot of products that aren't in plastic.
Talk to me a little bit about that, about you're an expert in toxicology. Tell me a little bit about your expertise and what your impressions are about the food supply.
Well, my field is chemicals and nuclear radiation that cause cancer and birth defects mostly, but other effects too. And I advise people not to buy food in plastic, you know, oil, mayonnaise, peanut butter, and things like that, because the plastics migrate from the containers into the food. And also to say never microwave anything in plastic. And these are things to be avoided, but also the tremendous amount of pesticides on the food supply. And I was talking with your associate earlier about the great increase we were talking about the great increase in vineyards in Northern California. Well, all those vineyards use tremendous amounts of pesticides, and it gets into the water supply, and these are very bad. So you try to, you know, people who try to eat organically, it's very difficult.
So, for example, if you are living near a vineyard and they're using pesticides and it gets into the water table, what can you do to combat, if you've got well water, what can you do to combat the pesticides that are getting into your body?
You can't.
Does any water filtration help it, or?
Well, reverse osmosis may help. The thing is to keep it from getting there, and anybody who lives near vineyards needs to know what they're using on those vineyards. I mean, don't trust the vineyards to say, don't worry about a thing, this is just fine.
Right. What do you think are the most common pesticides to worry about with regard to, let's take the vineyards, for example?
I don't know what they're using nowadays in California. I do know, for instance, that one of the problems I see over and over is this methyl bromide that they're used on strawberries, which is very common in California. And I say I wouldn't eat a strawberry from California if I knew it wasn't organic because of the methyl bromide use, which is also going into the water table.
And then there's, of course, that we're importing from other countries too. What's your thought on some of the fruits and vegetables coming from other countries?
It's hard to know what they're using. It's hard to know if they're actually tested. I think very few products are actually tested before they get into this country. I don't know. It's very difficult to find out.
So do you think the food supply was better then than now because it was more organic then?
Yes, I think that those were the days when you bought locally and you didn't eat strawberries in February. You know, you had the kind of food that was locally grown. Mm-hmm. They did use pesticides then, but I don't think it was as much or, as pervasive.
What are you most concerned about with the food supply and with the food that we're eating now? What's the biggest fear you have?
Well, I'm wondering what's going to happen with all the genetic engineering of food. So we really don't know what the implications of this are going to be. And some countries have allowed it to be used in their areas. The European Union, to my knowledge, until now, is still saying, no, we will not allow genetically engineered food into the European Union. I think that's a concern. Because if you get soybeans and wheat and corn that are Roundup free, Roundup is glyphosate, and this is a weed killer, pretty soon these are going to pollinate and spread throughout all the plants. And then pretty soon there's going to be nothing but the genetic engineered ones because they're going to cross-pollinate.